Hello everyone, my name is Kimberly Gonzalez, and today we're going to be looking at the landscape changes in the world due to climate change. So we're going to be looking at these impacts on a global scale and on a regional scale. So on a global scale, we'll be looking at the whole world in general, and then as regional scales, in my case here, we'll look at a state, and then we'll look at a region in South America. So on a global scale, climate change is altering the whole planet in several different ways. The main physical changes we see are going to be due to erosion and flooding, and it's mostly due to global warming. So for example here, increased heat is going to dry up the soil, which makes the soil a lot lighter, a lot easier to transport by natural means. So like it'll carry in the wind, floods will take it away much easier. It'll change the landscape very drastically. So here on the right side of the screen, this is just a model kind of showing what leads to what. And as you can see, most of it, if not all of it, is due to the change of waterways and erosion. So first let's look at waterways. To fully grasp this concept, we have to look at the water cycle. So, in short, the water cycle goes from water that is on Earth, so like here on the diagram in the ocean and lakes underground, being evaporated by the sun or any type of warming. And so, in turn, that evaporation will turn into precipitation. So anything from snow, rain, hail, things like that. And that'll all come from the condensation being formed in the clouds and then coming back down when there's too much in the atmosphere. Because of global warming, climate change, there is a lot more evaporation happening. So this has to come down in some sort of way. Now, recently, especially, a lot of precipitation that would be snow is coming down as rain. So flooding is becoming a very big issue just because a lot of water that has been stored in ice, for example, is now being released, and that where it had a place to be held is now flowing freely, and that's going to raise sea levels. It's going to be it's going to cause issues in certain lakes because the lake has no more of a reservoir to hold all that water, so of course it's going to start eroding the land, it's going to start flooding. A big issue with this is water security. So a lot of salt water is coming inland, and this is going to affect all of our freshwater sources. So what people are planning to do and what can be done is they're thinking that using natural barriers such as mangroves will protect our shorelines and kind of form a barrier between all the erosion that's happening because of the excess water. And so it's not 100%, but it'll definitely help. So there's a few different natural ideas that they are coming up with for this. The next thing is erosion. So like I said before, drying soil causes a big impact. Now, many of you have probably heard of runoffs. So this is agricultural soil that has been run off into lakes, oceans, any water source. And most agricultural farms will use fertilizers. Those fertilizers will then impact organisms in the water. It'll impact our drinking water. And the increase of erosion is only going to make that worse. It's already an issue that farmers deal with, but because of this, it's going to become a way bigger issue. Change in river dynamics. So, and this also leads into impacts on wildlife because a lot of animals, or a lot of aquatic animals, when it is time to breed, what happens is they go into brackish water or estuaries. So a lot of marine animals do not breed in actual salt water. They'll go into brackish waters, and that's kind of, most of it is made from like tide pools, things like that where there's kind of isolated sources of water that will eventually go back into the ocean. And the same thing happens with freshwater fish as well. They kind of will breed more inland in kind of puddles instead, and then when the river comes back in, it'll pick everything up. But because of the erosion, these waterways are being shifted and turning, and they're going to be going in different directions that the wildlife isn't used to. So they're going to have to adapt to not only just the change in where they naturally breed or lay their eggs, but it's gonna also cause like changes in pH because it'll maybe connect with other water sources. And a lot of fish are very sensitive to changes in pH, and that is a big thing with relocation right now, where scientists are having a hard time trying to relocate endangered species, because to find a specific body of water with the same water parameters is very difficult to do. Next, let's look at regional scale. So, around the world, things are going to happen a lot differently. Some places are going to be drier, some wetter. Some places are warmer than others, so impacts will kind of go a lot faster. Like here in the United States, we have one side of the world, California, that's burning, and then we have the other side on the East Coast where it's all flooding. So, I always like to use Florida as an example just because it's so easy to see. A lot of Florida is the Florida Keys, and if we are not careful within the next couple years, a few years, we will be underwater. And it's a big deal with erosion of beaches. A lot of flooding alters all of these ecosystems here, and it compromises our water sources. In Key Biscayne, that is our main source of fresh water. It's now, people are very nervous because salt water is coming so far inland now that the Everglades is becoming compromised with this salt water. So our main source of fresh water is at stake here. The erosion of the beaches just makes it easier for this flooding to happen, and the warming weather is also causing a lot more tropical storms, hurricanes to be forming. A lot of the times they will kind of slow down passing over Cuba. However, between Cuba and the furthest point of Florida, there is about 99 miles of just water, warm water, that causes a lot more energy in these hurricanes. So that also doesn't help the flooding that's already naturally happening. And then the next thing I want to look at is the Amazon rainforest. So parts of the Amazon right now are dying off. They're drying, they're becoming dry, and it's because the evaporation, the transpiration pretty much, between these trees, the temperature is getting too hot for all this vegetation to store enough water that will allow them to continue living even through all of this transpiration happening. So that's evaporation through the leaves of all these trees. It is one of the biggest carbon sinks we have on the planet, and that's why it's so important that people stop the logging and deforestation here, because soon enough, there won't be enough of this land to hold all that carbon, and instead it's going to start releasing greenhouse gases instead of storing them, which is the whole point. So even planting more it's going to be a lot harder to reduce these impacts than it would if, this huge amount of land would stop dying. But it's getting too warm for it to keep up. Another thing that will happen is increased pest infestation, because think about it, animals or bugs that thrive off of wood or decaying plant matter are running out of places to live, so in turn they'll go and infest agriculture. So all of these stem crops, a lot of just maturing crop foods, they'll become infested because these insects have nowhere else to go. So they look for the next option. So in conclusion, there's a lot of change happening throughout the world, and it's specific to each and every part of the globe. So what we have to do is really just find specific ways to combat each of these issues. But it's a little hard when you have to do so many different things, because of course the geography around this world is never going to be the same. So hopefully within the next few years we'll have more research into that and we can start getting to work.